Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Nasha Mukt Urpi Abhiyan Talk Series 2. I, Swati Bangera, Associate at the Department of Student Affairs, MAHE, will be your moderator for this talk on decoding India's drug laws. This talk is being organized as a part of the Nasha Mukt Urpi Abhiyan project, funded by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, and in association with the Center for Clinical and Innovative Forensics, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. To deliver this talk, we have with us Dr. Vinod C. Nayak, Professor in the Department of Forensic Medicine and Coordinator for the Center for Clinical and Innovative Forensics, Kasturba Medical College, Manipal. In addition to this talk, we will also be launching the newly designed website of the Department of Student Affairs and releasing the latest edition of the department's newsletter, Hitaishi. And to do these honors, we have our beloved Pro-Chancellor, Dr. H.S. Ballal. Sir, it is an honor to have you with us. I now request Dr. Geeta Maya, Director of Student Affairs, MAHE, and the Principal Investigator for the NMBA project to formally welcome our invited guest and the gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Swati. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to Nasha Mukt Urpi Abhiyan Talk Series 2 on decoding India's drug laws by our eminent resource person, Dr. Vinod C. Nayak. This talk is jointly organized with the Center for Clinical and Innovative Forensics, KMC, Manipal. Nasha Mukt Urpi Abhiyan, by involving young leaders of MAHE, is a one-year project undertaken by the Department of Student Affairs under the auspices of the Nasha Mukt Bharat Abhiyan 2021 and is funded by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. We are very fortunate to have the esteemed Pro-Chancellor of MAHE, Dr. H.S. Ballal, who has always been very supportive and encouraging all our initiatives. We at MAHE have always been striving towards the welfare of our students by providing a strong support system and conducting various activities and awareness programs. To bring to light all these initiatives and to facilitate our activities, we will be launching our official DSA website and will also be releasing the second edition of the DSA newsletter, Hitaishi. Sir, it is a great honor to have you with us to formally inaugurate our website and also officially release our newsletter today. I take this opportunity to extend very cordial welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
It's a privilege to have Dr. Vinod C. Nayak, Professor in the Department of Forensic Medicine and the Coordinator for the Center for Clinical and Innovative Forensics, KMC Manipal, as the resource person for today's event. Sir, I welcome you very warmly and thank you for accepting our invitation to deliver this talk.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.
Cordial welcome to all the participants of this webinar. I hope it will be an enlightening and fruitful session for you all. Thank you for your enthusiasm and support. I also extend a cordial welcome to all MAHE officials, faculty members, and students, and all other distinguished invitees attending this talk. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today.
Thank you, ma'am, and I welcome you too to this event. I now request President of today's function, Dr. H.S. Ballal, to launch the department's website by clicking on the link displayed in the chat box. Thank you, sir. Here is a glimpse of our website. You can see a list of our student counselors, their field of expertise, as well as their contact details for ready access. The SOP tab shows standard operating procedure followed by MAHE to deal with all student-related issues. This will give the students and parents a clear idea on how to deal with any issue and who to approach for advice or help. MAHE as a strong grievance redressal mechanism in place for the students. Here, you will find MAHE's policies on anti-ragging and helpline numbers to contact in case of emergency. MAHE as a well-established counseling facility for its student with group of dedicated and qualified counselors to address the needs of the student. In order to streamline the process of finding a counselor, DSA has introduced the facility to book counseling appointments through its website, making it more convenient for students. You can also visit this tab to know more about the student club under the management of DSA. All the events conducted by the DSA will be displayed in the main screen. Scrolling down, you will also be able to view the contact details of the director and deputy directors of the department to call in case of any emergency. This was a brief glimpse of our website. I request all our students to visit the website and make use of all the facilities provided. The link will be shared with you all shortly. I now request Dr. H.S. Ballal, sir, to release the latest edition of our newsletter, Hitaishi. Thank you, sir. Here's a glimpse of our newsletter. Thank you, sir, for launching the website and releasing the newsletter. I invite Sir to present his presidential remarks. I would like to introduce him to the gathering. A doctor, educator, administrator, and a philanthropist, Dr. Hebri Subhash Krishna Ballal obtained his MBBS degree from Mysore Medical College and a postgraduate degree in radiology from Government Medical College, Bangalore. Dr. H.S. Ballal has been associated with Manipal Group for nearly 50 years, having joined as a faculty in radio diagnosis at KMC Mangalore in 1971. In 1997, he was appointed as the Associate Dean of the KMC Mangalore. Subsequently, in 2001, he was elevated as its Dean, and in 2003, he was appointed to the distinguished position of Vice Chancellor of Manipal University. In 2007, he was elevated to the position of Pro-Chancellor of MAHE. Dr. Ballal is the recipient of numerous awards, including the IBM Inspiring Vice Chancellor of the Year Award and Educational Personality of the Year Award in 2005, New Year Award in 2008, which was instituted by the Academy of General Education, Rotary Club and Syndicate Bank, and the Karnataka Rajyotsava Award in the field of medicine from Government of Karnataka in 2016. He has served as the chairman of FICCI Higher Education Committee and as a member of the Medical Council of India, New Delhi, the Board of Management of JSS University, Mysore, and the Manipal Academy of Higher Education Trust. He is also a trustee and governing council member of TAPME Trust. A philanthropist at heart, Dr. Ballal has been helping poor students with scholarship through the Belinge Sanjeeva Hegde Trust, set up in the memory of his late father, and has been helping poor patients with medical treatment through Mahe Medical Insurance. Apart from his academic achievements, Dr. Ballal is an ardent admirer of Yakshagana and is also an avid sportsman, representing his university in tennis and cricket during his college days. With these brief words of introduction, I present before you Dr. H.S. Ballal and request him to address the gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Swati, our very dynamic Director of Student Affairs, under whose guidance this whole program is taking place today, Dr. Geeta Maya and her entire team. And of course, our guest speaker of Nasha Mukt Udupi Abhiyan Talk Series 2, my boy, Dr. Vinod Naik. I always call him as my right hand because in addition to being an eminent forensic specialist, he was the head of the department and now the professor of forensic medicine of our prestigious medical college. And also, he has been my sports secretary for a very long period of time because I fully trust him. That's why I call him as my right hand. Because of his dynamic leadership, say our sports and games activities of our university has scaled to much greater heights. That's the reason I do not want to relieve him at all. And he is of great help to me because I myself being a sports enthusiast. Thank you, Vinod, for the support that you are giving me. And I immediately agreed when Geeta told me that tomorrow you have to release the new website of Nasha Mukt Abhiyan and also release this newsletter that is Hitaishi. The name I really liked, Hitaishi, well-wisher, in English, which is a very appropriate name, I feel. Both this website as well as the newsletters which I have launched and released just now carry a lot of information to the student community, especially, not only about the drug abuse, Nasha Mukt, but also many other facilities that are available in Mahe, which the students can utilize, which is very, very important because students, especially when they come to the university, most of them will be leaving their house for the first time. So it is our responsibility because parents will be apprehensive. It is our responsibility to take care of them like their own parents. That's what we do during that counseling, which every institution has, when the new entrants come. And very different people, not only the heads of the institutions, wardens, director of student affairs plays a very, very major role. That's the reason why we are having that post. We have many subordinates or deputies to help Geeta Maya, because this is very, very important for the students, because once they are out of the house for the first time, naturally, they will have so many feelings, homesickness, out of the house for the first time. They require frequent counseling. And this Nasha Mukt Abhiyan, already I have sent my message. This is a very, very important topic because what we observe today, especially in educational campuses, the students are lured to this drug abuse, which we have to be very, very careful because otherwise that will destroy the future of the young generation. We being a large country, with more than 50% of the people below the age of 25 years. And it's very important that we should take care of them, make them good citizens, providing not only education and healthcare, but also see that they do not fall into the trap of this drug abuse so that they can become good citizens of our country. And also our country can go from a developing to a developed country so that all of us who are on the verge of, our lives, will have a good place to live. That's why we are also a little bit selfish. That's why we take a lot of pains in our university to see that students do not fall into this trap. I should compliment Geeta Maya for taking this initiative of Nasha Mukt Abhiyan. It is a national program, as she already said. It is in association with the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. And we are doing it in and around Udupi. Yesterday, I had a discussion with her about this. They are going into the deep into the villages also to enlighten or create awareness among the rural people also about the dangers of this drug abuse. And it's very important that we should take the help of other service organs, like police department is very, very important, especially to catch these drug peddlers. They are more dangerous, you know. Only police can do that. And as far as those people, our students or anybody for that matter, who fall into this drug abuse, you know, we have to counsel them. That we can do. But peddlers are very, very important, which police department has to, we have to involve them to see that these people are caught so that the drug supply will be cut off. And as far as the students who get into these drugs, we have to counsel them, which they are doing very, very periodically. And we have different levels of people who can counsel them. Even in the hostels, you know, we have local hostels, our staff members, then the chief warden, then of course, director of student affairs. And we have a faculty student mentorship, you know, where faculty are given some students so that they can take care of them. And they have to report to them. And also, if students do not attend the classes continuously for Vinod, for giving me an opportunity to be part of this launching ceremony. Thank you very much. And I wish this program every success. And I'm sure your venture will go a long way in making our entire campus as well as surrounding areas absolutely Nasha Mukt, drug-free. Wish you all the best, Geeta and your team. Thank you very much for the opportunity that is given to me. And also, I would like to wish Vinod Naik all the best in his lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your motivational words. Now it's time to hear from our renowned resource person, Dr. Vinod C. Nayak. But before I invite him to audience, I have the privilege to introduce him to our audience. Dr. Vinod C. Nayak graduated with an MBBS degree from Kasturba Medical College, Mangalore, obtained an MD in Forensic Medicine from Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, and has been a faculty there for the last 16 years. He has been a member of several organizations like the National Panel for Framing Medico-Legal Guidelines for Institutional Healthcare in India, the Executive Committee of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences for the CBME curriculum, and was also a former president of the Karnataka Medico-Legal Society. He has more than 150 indexed international and national publications to his credit. He is also the peer reviewer for the International Journal of Forensic and Legal Medicine, published by Elsevier and PLOS ONE. He is also actively involved in training the law enforcement agencies, including the police and the judiciary at regional, state, and national levels. Dr. Vinod Nayak is currently serving as a professor in the Department of Forensic Medicine and the coordinator for the Center for Clinical and Innovative Forensics, Kasturba Medical College, Mahe, Manipal. With these brief words of introduction, I present before you Dr. Vinod C. Nayak. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Swati. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Geeta Maya, the Director of the Department of Student Affairs, for giving me an opportunity to be a resource person for today. Thank you so much, Madam. I would like to thank Dr. H.S. Ballal, sir. Thank you so much for your kind words. A very, very good morning to all the attendees and participants of today's session. This opportunity given to me to be part of this Nasha Mukt Abhiyan, which is such a noble and social initiative of the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India, is very heartening indeed. I'm very, very happy that I'd be able to contribute in some way to this noble cause. Friends, being a forensic expert, dealing with drug vigilance in society and encountering drug victims day in and day out, I find it most disturbing that year after year I see young lives wasted away in smoke, and it is maddening to witness an entirely preventable disease consume so many people, sometimes along with their families too. You know, drug abuse is an insidious disease. It is definitely preventable, targeting younger and younger people with every passing day. And there is a great deal that each one of us as members of society can do to curb this drug menace in society. I've always felt that, awareness is the key to prevention. Awareness about the devastation brought about by drugs on the health and the holistic development of individuals in general, and students in particular. All this is very commonly spoken about, the health hazards and the problems associated with drugs with regard to both physical as well as mental issues. And there have been earlier sessions also on drug disorders by eminent speakers. I'm also of the very firm opinion that awareness creation about the legalities, about law, especially among teenagers, is very important. It's very important because they need to know where they stand from the law point of view as well. This awareness also could go a very long way in playing a sort of counterbalancing role in shaping their future, and helping them make an informed decision. Hence, I would like to dissect out the intricacies of India's drug-related laws in my very brief session on decoding India's drug laws. I'd just like to share my screen with you. Madam, is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a second, not able to change the slide. Okay. The adolescence is a very crucial period for the beginning and experimentation with new things, as we all know. The situation of drug abuse in adolescence is becoming a global sort of health problem and is reaching at an alarming rate in the third world nations. So as the abuse epidemic sort of continues, the youth of our nation, it's a generation that refuses to be left out on anything, is fast catching up with this epidemic or this trend, very quickly and sadly effectively also. They make almost 1/5 of our population, these 15 to 24-year-olds, and they'll be the ones who will be eventually determining our country's moral, political, social persuasions. So, and this drug abuse is sort of doing nothing to lighten their burdens. So, what exactly is causing this problem? That is something we need to really understand. One of the most important reason is probably peer pressure. Pressure from friends. These teen years, they consist of a series of challenges for everybody. For some, these challenges can quickly change from just being conquerable to overpowering, right? And this can surely lead to some very, very serious issues for teenagers. Once teens enter high school or college, they are bombarded with so many pressures of maintaining good grades. They have to engage in extracurricular activities. They have to get ready for higher education. They have to have a social life. They have to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their lives. So all these are stressors, right? So in addition to the normal stressors that come with being a teenager, it is not very uncommon for teens to face ridicule from peers, feel enormous amount of pressure from parents, academic advisors. So also deal with certain issues like, mental health issues. So peer pressure is one of the very important reasons for teens to get into this um, abuse habit, right? Um, in fact, when I was just going through a very recent survey by the National Institute on Drug Abuse, it has been seen that a majority of adolescents aged between 12 to sort of 17 to 18 years who had illicit drugs within a short time before the survey. It has been seen that a majority of these teens reported having been given drugs or alcohol by a peer, by a friend, by a batchmate or a classmate. So that is something which is very disturbing. See, teens want to be accepted. They want to be fitting into the group. And when their best friend offers them drugs or alcohol, it is very unlikely that they'll say no, isn't it? Very, very unlikely. And at the same time, teens also want to feel mature. They want to be taken really seriously. They want to feel like grown-ups. And it's not surprise that they want to feel so, because the idea of being an adult is very new and exciting. Being able to drink, being able to smoke cigarettes, being able to do illicit, harmful drugs. It's also very exciting for many, teens, isn't it? So all this adds on to the problems, the need to sort of feel like grown-ups. And then they're very, very rebellious in nature. As you know, the teens these days, they just want to rebel against anything and everything. Different rebellious teens choose different substances to use based on their individual personalities. Alcohol is a drug of choice for the angry teenager because it frees them to behave aggressively, right? Some teens can abuse prescription medicines to feel high. Escape drugs like hallucinogens, they're often used by young people who feel misunderstood and they want to escape to a more sort of idealistic world. Smoking cigarettes can feel like a form of rebellion to flaunt, their independence and make their parents very angry. So for the reasons for teenage drug use are as complex as teenagers themselves. That is something we need to, understand. And media does nothing to help this cause, to be very frank. A majority of teens agree that the music that they listen makes marijuana seem very cool, seem charas seem very cool, and the majority of them agree that movies and TV shows, etc., make drugs seem like it's an okay thing to do, So when they see their popular stars on TV or the movie screen, they feel it's a very okay thing to do, and you have to be sort of aware, about what sort of media the children are consuming, and we need to, talk to them about it. So what happens is they start experimenting when they're unhappy and can't find a healthy outlet, for their frustrations. They may turn to chemicals for solace. Depending on what substance they're trying, they may feel blissfully oblivious, or happy or energized. So they usually start off with some gateway sort of drugs like cigarettes, nicotine and alcohol, and sadly go on to harder drugs like cocaine or hashish or charas and mess up their lives, LSDs, and so many options, sort of available for them. They ultimately reach a stage where they're at crossroads, and with so much variety at their disposal that they eventually get hooked on to some or the other drug of abuse or a combination of, sort of substances. And eventually they become a concoction of, sort of drugs and substances of abuse, from where returning back becomes very, very difficult, from where turning back seems impossible. They reach a point of no return. That is something we need to worry about, and we have to make sure the interventions are applied much ahead, well in advance, so that they will not be able to go to that state. So before I go into the legal aspect as such, I would just like to make a passing remark about two geographic locations which are directly or indirectly responsible for a majority of drug abuse related issues that happen within our country. Though there are a lot of local hubs within the country where cultivation of such drugs happens, but the major areas from where this sort of these drugs leak into the country due to illicit trafficking happening are these two regions, the Golden Crescent region and the region of the Golden Triangle. It is one of Asia's two principal areas, the Golden Crescent, of illicit opium production located at the crossroads of Central, South and Western Asia, which overlaps Afghanistan, Iran and Pakistan, whose mountainous peripheries sort of define this crescent. That's why it's called the Golden Crescent. And also the Golden Triangle, which is an area of around 350,000 kilometers that overlaps 4 countries, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam and Thailand. So see, this is geographically, these are the locations of the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle. If you see, this is very, a lot of opium illegal production, illicit drug trafficking, a lot of such things happen. And since India is sort of wedged in between these two areas, as you can see in the map, because it is sort of sandwiched in between these two areas, a lot of leakage of the illicit trafficking happening between these two regions spills onto India, and India faces the brunt of it in the form of drug abuse and all of that. So all of this plus the rapid rise of local drug hubs, manifests itself in the form of increased addiction in society in general and students in specific. It is not very uncommon to hear about teenagers and students being apprehended by law enforcement agencies. It's a very common thing, right? You hear about it day in and day out in newspapers. You read about it. They get apprehended by police, arrested due to drug-related offenses. And the dark net has become a very accessible thing for teenagers now. It's a very new thing. The police are also finding it really, really challenging to break this, sort of challenge. And it is also preferred due to the maintenance of anonymity. That is why the darknet is preferred. And there has been rapid proliferation of such darknet markets, in recent times. That is something to be really careful about because it makes it very easy for people to obtain the drugs, makes it a little more safer as well. So that's something which is very dangerous, can lead to increase in this menace. NDPS, or the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, was passed in 1985. It has been amended in 3 times, in fact, 1988, 2001, 2014 as well. So I'll not go through all these, all the details of this act. This is the mainstay of the Indian drug law. This is the act based on which all of the drug-related offenses are sort of tried. And so this act is the backbone of the Indian fight against this drug, menace. It consists of 5 broad chapters. I'll not go into the details of any of them. I'll just pick out some important points from some chapters, mainly in the 1st chapter and then the 4th chapter, and a little bit in the 5th chapter. But otherwise, they consist. The act consists of 5 major chapters. The preliminary chapter, which defines all of the drugs and all sort of activities in relation to drugs. 2nd chapter defines what is the authority of the government and what are the measures that it can take in order to curb this menace, who are the officers that it can appoint and what are their roles. Chapter 3 consists of the prohibition, control and regulation of drug-related offenses, the drug menace in general, how they prohibit it and how they can control and what are the measures in place to control and regulate this menace. The 4th chapter defines the different offenses, the punishment prescribed for these offenses as well. So the offenses and penalties chapter is very important for all to know. And the 5th chapter describes the procedures for investigation and prosecution. So what are the procedures that they need to apply while investigating, while frisking a person, while searching a person, and different scenarios. I'll go through them as well very briefly. Right. So these are the chapters which are there as part of the NDPS Act. So the objective, as I already said, to prohibit, control, and regulate the operations relating to narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. All right. The Act has very clearly mentioned what constitutes narcotic drugs, what constitutes psychotropic substances, and all of that. And by operations, regulate the operations. By operations, it means anything, almost anything and everything related to drugs. It could be engaging in cultivating any plant. It could be a coca plant or a cannabis plant or an opium plant. It could be anything related to cultivation. It could be anything related to production, manufacture, possession, sale, purchase, transportation, storing, concealment, consuming, importing, exporting, both state-wise as well as internationally as well. Of any of these narcotic drugs or psychotropic substances. It could be literally dealing with any activities related to these sort of substances, letting out any premises, for example, for these drug offenses, financing directly or indirectly any of these drug activities, abetting, harboring any person who is a criminal, who is engaged in any drug related activities. So any of these activities. So by operations, it means regulating almost anything and everything to do with narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances. And secondly, also also providing sort of a licensing system for both central as well as state governments to regulate the manufacture and as well as importing, exporting, cultivation, very important. Cultivation also becomes very, very important, right? So the central government legally empowers some geographical areas to cultivate some drugs which are required for, it could be medicinal purposes or whatever reason. So a license has to be obtained for these purposes. So the central government is empowered to fix from time to time the limits within which licenses may be given for the cultivation for most importantly opium. All right. So to the cultivators have to take a license, and the license can be withdrawn or renewed from time to time. So these are some of the objectives of this NDPS Act. And one very important thing to remember is the central government is empowered to amend the list of psychotropic substances at any given time. If it is satisfied that it is necessary to amend it, it can either remove any name from this list, or it can add any new drug to this list of psychotropic substances. Okay. So on the basis of information that it receives and the evidence that it receives with respect to the nature and effects of a substance or the scope of abuse of a substance, so any material, any substance, any information, new information regarding the abuse scope, if it is received by research, then it can add such a substance to the list to make it illegal, all right? Or it can remove the name if it feels that it no longer needs to be made illegal. So that the government is empowered to do, all right? Very recently, I think tramadol was added to this list of substances, and before that, I think ketamine in 2011. I think ketamine was added. Very recently, tramadol was added. So all this, there's a big list of psychotropic substances which is made available in this act. So all the substances which are mentioned in this list are illegal. All right. So it very clearly defines what is a narcotic and gives a list of narcotic drugs as well as psychotropic substances. So that is very important. So the first chapter defines what exactly is meant by what exactly constitutes illegality, in the sense that which drug is illegal and how is that drug defined. I mean, if it's a if it is cannabis, what formulations of cannabis are considered illegal, what forms of cannabis are considered illegal. It also defines various other activities, like what do you mean by manufacture, what do you mean by illicit traffic, what do you mean by production, and so many other, what do you mean by a narcotic in general, the list of psychotropic substances, everything is defined in the first chapter as such. So for those of you who are interested, cannabis or hemp means, what is illegal about cannabis is, first of all, charas, which is the separated resin in whatever form, could be crude form or purified form, which is obtained from the cannabis plant, and it includes a concentrated preparation resin known as hashish oil. So charas, hashish, okay, very important. Charas is a cannabis concentrate made from the resin of a live cannabis plant. That is something which needs to be remembered, and is handmade, in fact, in the Indian subcontinent. The difference between hashish and charas is that hashish is made from a dead cannabis plant, whereas charas, is made from a live cannabis plant. In fact, charas was an integral part of certain religious sects also. Cannabis flowering buds are, sort of rubbed between the palms to make charas. In fact, if you remember, very recently, a charas racket was busted in Chennai, where it was being illicitly trafficked inside soft toys. So charas is definitely defined as being illegal as per the NDPS Act. Then you have the very commonly encountered ganja, right? Ganja, it's known by many names, in fact, ganja, weed, grass, marijuana, and so many other names. These are the flowering or the fruiting tops of the cannabis plant. Okay, so ganja has been made illegal. That is the flowering or the fruiting tops of the cannabis plant, but the seeds and leaves have been excluded. Seeds and leaves of the ganja, the cannabis plant have been excluded. I think some people, in fact, while preparing a preparation of ganja and smoked in cigarettes, they choose to avoid the seeds and leaves. The seeds and leaves have been excluded because they are considered to be having a very low amount of the cannabinoid active principle, which is actually responsible for the addictive, sort of power of the of cannabis. That is the active principle, the THC. So seeds and leaves have been excluded. So bhang, which is a preparation made exclusively from the seeds and leaves, is not within the purview of this act, in fact. Okay, and any other mixture with or without any neutral material. So neutral material means substances like the seeds and leaves, wherein there is no active principle. So this is known as the neutral material. So any mixture with or without neutral material of any of the above forms of cannabis are considered illegal, like charas, hashish. Okay, and cannabis plant means any plant of the genus cannabis, Cannabis sativa, Cannabis indica, and all of that. Okay, and coca derivative is means crude cocaine. Cocaine, I think many would have heard about. Crude cocaine, all right, is considered to be illegal, as well as pure cocaine, which is the methyl ester, which I'll mention just now. So crude cocaine, that is any extract of the coca leaf. See, cocaine is extracted from Erythroxylon coca. That is the plant from which it is extracted. Erythroxylon coca. So the coca leaf, from it is from that from where cocaine and other crude cocaine is initially extracted, from which pure cocaine is later on processed. So crude cocaine is considered illegal. Crude cocaine is sometimes called coca paste. Okay, coca paste. It is called the poor man's drug because it is very cheap. Cocaine is very expensive, but crude cocaine can be obtained cheaply, and from this crude cocaine, pure cocaine can be processed. So crude cocaine, please remember, is illegal, and it can only be smoked, not through other sort of routes. So though cocaine is very expensive and a sophisticated drug, its production involves a crude method. Okay, so crude cocaine is considered illegal. Ecgonin, which is a precursor, it's a naturally occurring alkaloid in the coca leaf. It is both a metabolite and the precursor of cocaine, in fact, and hence cocaine can be derived from ecgonin. So it becomes sometimes these substances are also used in order to have the high because it is cheap and inexpensive, whereas cocaine, the pure form, can be a little more expensive. So crude cocaine is considered illegal. Ecgonin, it's also known as a controlled substance because there are some substances known as controlled substances. So what happens is if these substances are not there, these substances control the higher forms or the purer forms of the drug, because it is from these substances that other purer forms are extracted. So these are known as controlled substances. If these substances are controlled, the manufacturing or the processing of the purer forms is also controlled. So these are all controlled substances as mentioned in the Act as well. So crude cocaine, ecgonin, and all the derivatives of ecgonin from which it can be recovered, as well as purer cocaine, that is the methyl ester of benzyl ecgonin, are considered illegal as per this Act. So imagine cocaine. It's a very crude method used to manufacture cocaine. In fact, it is estimated that about actually kerosene is required. Kerosene or gasoline is required to extract cocaine. In fact, the coca leaf is immersed in kerosene or gasoline, and this process sort of initiates the production of cocaine. It is estimated that about 80 to 90 gallons of kerosene or gasoline is required to produce approximately 1 kg of cocaine. It's very scary, right? Considering the type of substances present in cocaine. So imagine what goes inside the body. Think of its effects. So in fact, in addition to the personal health problems that it causes, gasoline is stolen also, and large part of it which is not unused. It is estimated that about only 38% of it is used in the manufacture of cocaine. The rest of it is thrown into rivers, into oceans. So imagine the effect on the ecosystem as well, especially in countries like Colombia, where it is sort of rampantly produced. So there are a lot of problems associated with the both the manufacture as well as the use of cocaine. So yeah, getting back, these are the definitions under the NDPS Act regarding drugs. It defines coca leaf, it defines coca plant. It's as I told you, it also defines what is a sort of a controlled substance. It defines what is a narcotic drug. A narcotic drugs is defined as being cocaine, cannabis, or opium. These three are considered to be narcotics under the NDPS Act. Okay, it defines opium. What is an opium derivative? Also, what is prepared opium? What are other alkaloids of opium which are considered illegal, like morphine, codeine. Codeine, I think, rings a bell. It is a predominant ingredient of cough syrups, right? So phenanthrene alkaloids like morphine, codeine, opium, diacetyl morphine, that is heroin. So all of these are opium derivatives. These are also considered illegal. So it tries to encompass all of the drugs into the Act and defines what drug and what is a drug and which drugs are illegal and what are the derivatives of these drugs which can be considered illegal. It tries to make everything, the system, foolproof, to include all possible drugs. So that is what is the objective of the NDPS Act. In fact, here also, if you look at it, medicinal opium that is there is in fact considered to be an opium derivative, but has been licensed to be produced for medicinal purposes. But diacetyl morphine, which is heroin, is considered illegal along with pure opium. Okay. In fact, initially opium was being used, which later on paved way for morphine. Opium is prepared from incisions made in the poppy capsules. The unripe poppy capsules are scratched or incisions are made, and they are, and the latex, the yellowish whitish latex which comes out of this capsule is condensed later on to form opium. This opium consists of other sort of ingredients as well, like morphine, and other alkaloids as well. So in fact, morphine, 12% is morphine, in fact, when you consider whole of opium. So morphine was again, it had addiction potential, scope of abuse. So in addition to opium, morphine also was a very constant source of drug abuse. And in fact, when heroin was, diacetyl morphine was invented, it was called heroin. The reason why it is called heroin is it was considered as a replacement for morphine. It was considered to be a heroic cure for morphine addiction. That is why the name heroin was used. But later on, people found out that heroin itself has great addiction potential. So it turned out to be a non-show. So everything from opium to morphine to heroin, all of these have been incorporated into the NDPS Act, and everything has been made illegal. All preparations containing more than 0.2% of morphine or containing any diacetyl morphine, as seen here, are considered illegal. In addition to that, what is poppy, what is poppy straw, what is poppy straw concentrate, everything has been defined under NDPS Act. I just wanted to go through this because I thought it was important for all to know what exactly are the formulations which are considered illegal under the, because often I am asked, is this illegal? Is this not illegal? Can I smoke a little bit of weed? Is it okay to, will I be apprehended? So this very clearly, the Act very clearly defines all of this. And it also gives a big list of psychotropic substances. Okay. Psychotropic substance is any substance or any salt which is included in this list. Okay, you can see LSD, lysergic acid derivative, diazepam, ketamine. Ketamine was added only in 2011, in fact. Psilocybin, pentobarbital, amphetamines, amobarbital, tramadol. Many of these are under the list of psychotropic substances. So it is in line with the, the green list, which has been formulated by the International Narcotics Control Board, the INCB, which is a major organization, international organization related to drug offenses, which involves itself with drug control. So this green list is in fact, our NDPS list is in line with this green list, which is sort of quoted and referred internationally as well. So this is how all the substances have been defined. I think almost any new drug also will be added to this list. As I already said, the government is empowered to do that. So it includes almost every substance that is normally abused. It's a very comprehensive list. So when it comes to authorities of the central government, I'll just go a little fast with respect to all of this. It's just a nice to know sort of area. So the government can take measures to prohibit or to prevent or to control drug abuse. It can appoint certain officers. It can commission a consultative committee, and there is a national fund available as per this act. And the state government is also empowered to sort of employ certain officers to deal with this menace. The central government can take measures for preventing and combating abuse in narcotic drugs, which includes coordination of actions by various officers at both the state and central government. It can provide assistance to concerned authorities in foreign countries, coordination with foreign agencies and concerned international organizations to facilitate a universal action for prevention and suppression of illicit traffic happening internationally in between nations. So that is also very important, a very important duty of the government. So these are some of the measures. In addition to that, identification, treatment, education, aftercare, rehabilitation, very important. It's not only about controlling and punishing, right? Rehabilitation and social reintegration of addicts. That is also one prime responsibility and duty of the government. The central government can appoint officers like the Narcotics Commissioner and such other officers as it thinks fit, who by themselves or with the help of other officers can perform functions relating to supervision of the cultivation, especially of opium, production of opium, any other function entrusted by the government. State government can also appoint such officers, and it can form a consultative committee which advises the central government on the matters relating to administration of this NDPS Act. It consists of a chairman and almost 20 members who have been very adequately mentioned in the Act. Actually, I'll not go into the details. I'm just rushing through these administrative aspects. So this consultative committee has basically been constituted for an efficient administration of this Act. Okay. And there is a national fund. Okay. It can be constituted to be called the National Fund for Control of Drug Abuse. And this fund can be used to meet the expenditure incurred in connection to combating illicit traffic in narcotic drugs and psychotropic substances or controlled substances. Okay. Finance is required, right? So it can be used for that. It can be used for controlling the abuse. It can be used for treating, rehabilitating, and identifying addicts, preventing drug abuse, educating public against drug abuse, right? All of this. So even this mission, which this Nasha Mukt Abhiyan also, to carry out all these things, so much of funding is required. So all these expenses which go into the fight against drug abuse is met by this National Fund for Control of Drug Abuse. State government also has the authority to appoint officers, which it thinks fit. So officers appointed under this subsection will, be reporting to the respective governments directly and are empowered to take some actions. So under the prohibition chapter, it has very clearly mentioned that certain operations are prohibited, as I already mentioned: cultivating any coca plant, cultivating opium, production, manufacture, possession, sale, consumption, anything and everything with related to narcotic drugs or psychotropic substances are prohibited very clearly. Central government is empowered, okay, to permit, control, and regulate the cultivation of all of these illegal substances and fixing the limits and licenses from time to time. I'll go a little fast here. So this is this slide is a little sort of important because it defines the punishment for anyone who contravenes the NDPS Act, based on whatever quantity has been sort of confiscated. So please remember, anyone who contravenes the NDPS Act will face punishment based on the quantity of the banned substance which has been confiscated. That is something very, very important to be remembered. Okay. What do you mean by that? So if a small quantity has been confiscated, then there is a rigorous imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with the fine which may extend to 10,000, or both. Okay. Fine or imprisonment or both, depending on the gravity, when it involves a small quantity. When the confiscation or the contravention involves a quantity lesser than commercial quantity but greater than small quantity, this I would like to mention as being an intermediate quantity, which is greater than small quantity but lesser than commercial quantity. Then the punishment is imprisonment, which may extend to sort of 10 years, and with fine which may extend to 1 lakh. Okay. Yeah. So you can see here the first sentence I said imprisonment for 1 year or with the fine or both. But here it is imprisonment for 10 years and with the fine. So it is not that or is no longer there. So cannot get away with fine. And where the contravention involves a commercial quantity, imprisonment which will be not less than 10 years, may extend to 20 years. And also a fine, which shall not be less than 1 lakh, it may extend to 2 lakhs. So one thing you may be wondering, what constitutes small quantity? What constitutes intermediate quantity? And what constitutes commercial quantity, right? So that probably is on the minds of everyone, because the punishment is dependent so much on this quantity here, right? I'll get to that. So in addition to this, there have been punishments mentioned in the Act for various other offenses related to drugs as well, like transport, sale, purchase of a plant, 10 years and 1 lakh, illegal embezzlement or illegally disposing of, not options, opium by the cultivators, 10 to 20 years and 1 to 2 lakhs fine. Any external dealings or allowing premises to be used for such purposes, financing illicit traffic, harboring offenders. So for all of these, punishment has been mentioned. Unable to maintain an account of licenses, failure to produce license when demanded, 3 years is imprisonment. An offense for which no punishment has been mentioned in the act also has been considered to be an offense here. If anything is beyond the scope of this act but related to illegality and sort of any drug related activity, even for that a basic imprisonment has been mentioned, looking into the gravity of the situation. The death penalty is also has been mentioned in the act, for which a lot of debate is going on, for a quantity which is more than that what is specified by the government. So all this, the very stringent punitive measures being which has been mentioned in the act. So punishment for a lot of activities related to drugs, as well as consumption and all of that. It's been very comprehensive. It has involved almost anything and everything related to drugs, any offense related to drugs. You actually cannot think of any other offense which is outside the purview of this act, in fact. So very comprehensive and stringent punishment has been sort of prescribed under this act. So I would just like to mention here, people might want to know what is a small quantity and what is a commercial quantity. So this slide just mentions some of the small quantities and commercial quantities of some very popular sort of drugs which are very routinely used for abuse purposes, which have enormous addiction potential. Drugs like amphetamines, charas, cocaine, ganja, heroin, LSD, the new in thing, methadone, morphine, opium. So as you can see, the list mentions small quantity and commercial quantities of all these drugs. For cocaine, it can be 0.071 ohms or 2 grams, small quantity. Whereas for ganja, it can be 1 kilogram. So depending on the drug, the small quantity has been defined. Okay. So look at this for a second or two, just to have an idea as to what are the small quantities and commercial quantities of different popular drugs that are routinely employed for abuse and addiction. Okay, so this is about small quantity and commercial quantity. Please remember, any quantity in between more than small and less than commercial amounts to intermediate quantity. Okay, so some of the very unique features of this NDPS Act, that's something that you would do good to remember, because we very practically experience it day in and day out. Okay, one is the reversal of the presumption of innocence. What is this? This is a very, very unique feature of the NDPS Act, which is not seen in any other act of or legislations of the IPC. Okay, other offenses like murder, rape, dacoity, etc. It is not seen in that. Under the NDPS Act, the presumption of innocence is reversed. What is this? In all the other general offenses, the prosecution must not only prove that you committed the act, but you must also prove that you had the guilty intention that you committed this act. All right, the prosecution needs to prove this. But I mean, a very common example is, say, if you sort of fire at an animal, okay, and it hits a human being, then the offense of murder is not actually made out, right? Therefore, the prosecution must prove that the act was accompanied by an intention, right, of carrying out that particular act. That needs to be proved, and no other act, right? However, in the NDPS Act, there is a presumption that the act you have done is accompanied. The act is also accompanied with the requisite guilty intention of doing the act. So the presumption of the intention is very important here. It is presumed that you have the intention, okay, and the burden of proving that there was no intention falls on the accused. So that is something which is a very important aspect of this act. It becomes very difficult sometimes, right, when it is reversed. So that is something which everyone should know, that it is not easy to get out, to prove innocence. You have to prove it. And another interesting feature of this act is the Evidence Act of India says that no evidence made in police custody is admissible as evidence. No evidence made in police custody. While under police custody, no admission that is made is, can be taken as evidence. However, the NDPS Act provides for, a situation where special officers of specialized departments, as I said earlier, the government is empowered to employ such officers, so they will be appointed to enforce this law, and they are empowered to collect information from the accused. And, this information can be used as evidence. There are very recent Supreme Court judgments as well, which say that this evidence, this confession is admissible as evidence in the court, which means that an accused can be called by these officers, confessions can be taken, and these confessions can be used against the person who is making them. That is something very important to be remembered. And does this ring a bell? Yeah, I think because this is what happened in the Riya Chakravarti case, right? If you are following this case, you would know that the confession of Riya Chakravarti was recorded, in which she confessed to whatever allegations against her were, So what happens in these kind of situations is the defense knows that there is a tendency of coercion made by the officers while recording the confessions, and therefore the moment the confession is recorded, what they do is they immediately they move an application for retraction of this confession statement in the court the next day. So that is something which is very unique here. The confession made. So once any confession is made to these sort of officers, this can be really used as evidence against you. So you need to know where you stand. And NDPS Act provides for special codes. In all other cases, the CRPC, the Criminal Procedure Code, mandates that there are particular offenses which can be tried by these particular courts or judges. They're very clear about it. But in NDPS, separate courts have been created, special courts have been created, which are governed by judges who are no less than the rank of an additional sessions judge, okay, to preside over these cases, which means that these are highly specialized courts and no other cases other than narcotic cases are going on in these special courts. So that is something which is a feature of the NDPS Acts. And please remember, there are really, really stringent bail rules here. Okay, very stringent bail rules. Okay, it is not so very easy sometimes to get these, get bail. And many of you may have got caught smoking weed or may have got away by paying the police a few thousands or hundreds. But please remember, if the police choose to, they can prosecute you very well. And it becomes a big problem because it is a cognizable and a non-bailable offense. Cognizable means the police can investigate without any permission or warrant. Okay, very clear. Non-bailable, well, does not mean that bail just cannot be granted at all. It means that compared to another bailable offense where the police have a duty to release you the moment they arrest you, here the process is a little more complicated. Actually, in other offenses, the arrest happens only on paper. The police have a duty to release you the moment arrest happens. But in a non-bailable offense, once the police arrest you, they cannot release you on bail by themselves. You must apply for bail before the concerned magistrate or a sessions judge who will consider your case, and then they will decide whether you get bail or not, which means there is a possibility that once you are arrested by the police, you can spend some days, weeks, or months in jail. That is something which needs to be sort of remembered. And there is a very stringent provision of bail in certain situations. Okay. See, when the law of bail is concerned, when it comes to general offenses like other offenses like cheating, murder, or whatever it is, the fact that a person did not commit the crime need not be proved at the time of bail. So at the time of bail, you need not prove that the person did not commit. At the time of bail, only certain other things are considered. Things like if the bail is granted, what is the gravity of the crime, first of all? If the bail is granted, what is the possibility of him running away? What is the possibility of tampering of evidence? What is the possibility of influencing witnesses? So these are the 3 or 4 other things which are considered while giving bail in other cases. However, in the NDPS offenses, in some situations, in fact, not in all situations, especially with relation to commercial quantity cases, not only these conditions, general 3 or 4 conditions, which I already mentioned, apart from that, another condition is also imposed, and that is the accused person applying for bail must also prove that he did not commit the offense at the time of granting of bail itself, not at the not at the stage of trial when it happens later on. At the initial part of granting of bail, at that point of time itself, he needs to prove, that he did not commit the offense, which puts the burden of proof of innocence, upon the accused person, which is very, very difficult. That's why it's not easy. And this is the provision that again that prosecution tried to invoke in the case of Riya Chakravarti. Because before the Bombay High Court, I said that because this is a narcotics, there is a narcotics ring, there is a syndicate, surrounding this case. So the huge quantity of drugs is doing the rounds here, and that is why this has to be taken as a commercial quantity, and hence she should not be granted bail, was the statement put forward. But so she had to also prove that she was innocent, but the court refused to accept this in her this argument in her case, and said that it is clear that whatever investigations done so far prove that Riya was not part of the syndicate as such. She was only a consumer. Hence, this condition was not applied because it was not taken as a commercial quantity. Okay, and then the court granted bail to Riya. So it becomes very, very pertinent. The bail rules in some instances under the NDPS are very, very stringent. Okay. Yeah, though the act is very stringent, punitive measures are really stringent. There are a lot of things associated. There are certain safeguards also, certain safeguards as well. Because of the strict penalties of the NDPS Act, it also provides for certain safeguards. The procedure and formalities have to be adequately undertaken by the investigating officers. Okay, the officers who randomly collect your statements and use that against you, they're required to report in writing to their superior officers within a stipulated time. And the procedures, sort of adopted while doing a seizure, they're required to comply with mandates while doing seizures. They have to make a memo of the contraband. There is so much of it to be jotted down. And if you're arrested, your lawyer should be able to effectively prevent a conviction. Because a lot of times the requirements of these provisions are not complied by the investigating officer at that level. And on the basis of that only, the courts have acquitted several accused, sort of persons. So that is something. The person also has to be produced before the magistrate within 24 hours. After that, the magistrate may send him to police custody or judicial custody, and then it goes to a special court. Okay, small quantity cases can be tried at the magistrate level itself. And while searching the person, if it is related to a search, as per the section 50 of the NDPS, the IO must tell the person that he has a right to be searched in front of a magistrate. And if the person wishes that, he can be taken to a magistrate, or the magistrate can be called to come. So that is also one of the safeguards that has been provided. The charge sheet which has been filed later must contain a proper FIR, a Panchnama, witness statements, and all of that. And everything needs to be meticulously done. Okay, an appeal can always be done in a higher court, and sort of the previous judgment can be fought against. Okay, sometimes the police can arrest you on a Friday night just to complete their quota of arrests. We have seen that happening also. But the accused will get a chance to plead false implication again before the magistrate, again before the special officer, and then again in court. Okay, so it's not the end of the world. That is something that is to be remembered. And what about house search? What about house search? That is something which also needs to be seen here, right? House search, the general rule is that possession, exclusive possession of a place. It means the place is yours. It implies that you're consciously responsible for all the substances that are found in your place. That is the general rule. However, the circumstances of the case, the conduct of the accused, investigative procedures that have been undertaken, all that are very relevant in coming to a finding of either joint possession or the contraband being there without the knowledge of the owner of the place. All of these will be looked into. But one thing, a recent judgment has been made when contraband is confiscated. Earlier, what used to happen was, for example, if some years back, if 100 cough syrups were confiscated from a house, each cough syrup of 100 ml, okay, if 100 bottles were confiscated of 100 ml cough syrup, 100 bottles of 100 ml cough syrup, okay, are confiscated. In that 100 ml, you may have only 5 ml of codeine. Codeine is the banned substance, right? Suppose. Then earlier what used to happen was 100 into 5 ml codeine into 100 bottles. 5 ml of codeine in one bottle multiplied by 100 bottles. 5 into 100 is 500 ml, which used to be half a liter, a very small quantity. But now, if 100 bottles of 100 ml syrup have been confiscated, it is not taken into account that only 5 ml of codeine is there. The entire 100 ml will be taken into consideration. Please remember that. Okay, which means that 100 into 100 ml, that is 10,000 ml, which means 10 liters. So if now 100 ml of bottles are confiscated, 100 bottles, you will be charged for probably a commercial quantity, because it will be seen that 10 liters have been confiscated from you. So that is something which needs to be also remembered. Okay, so that is something with relation to a house search. Okay, so one important and last thing that I would want to mention here is many people ask me, in fact, as I already said, what about weed in general? What people ask me the Indian law with relation to weed. So let me just give you a few sort of pointers. Earlier in the 60s, the USA started a war on drugs. As I said, they went against all drugs, not only just hard drugs, which were the main problem, but it said, while we are at it, let's go after everything possible. As I said already, it organized a couple of conventions, and India also attended them. Finally, India had to, sort of pass the NDPS Act, which I already said, which is the main legislation under which drug offences are dealt with. So what about a joint under this act? What about, people ask me, what about a small joint? Please remember, anything and everything mentioned in the act is prohibited. So possession and consumption of even a joint or a small cigarette which contains weed is punishable. And until 2014, the minimal punishment was 6 months. But in 2014, the minimum punishment was enhanced to 1 year. So it got even more stringent, right? So that is something which needs to be known. Is weed legal? No, it is not legal. The NDPS Act clearly says that the production, cultivation, consumption, etc. of cannabis, resin and flowers is illegal. Ganja is strictly illegal. You may be possessing a something lesser than smaller quantity, but you can be prosecuted for consumption. I understand many of you, sometimes a rave party, 100 to 150 people are caught, everyone tests positive. Passive smoking, people say, so it is very unlikely that to happen. But a lot of things, investigative formalities will be completed, and a lot of other things, corroborative evidence will be taken into consideration, no doubt. But you can still be charged for consumption. Okay. So, however, in the act, the resin and flowers illegal, right? It makes no mention of the seeds and leaves of the cannabis plant. Okay, which means bhang, which is so commonly consumed, especially in northern regions, is not considered illegal, right? But there are some legislations. For example, some states have passed like Maharashtra is on the Bombay Prohibition Act. Under that, it includes seeds and leaves also, which is why bhang, which is legal in several other states, is illegal in Maharashtra. Okay, so there are certain states like this, prohibitive acts, which bring within their ambits bhang also. So that also needs to be remembered. Okay. So these were some of the things which I wanted to mention with relation to drug-related offences. So I thought mentioning about these unique features and some of the punishments and definitions would go a long way in helping you know where you stand. Primarily not get into it itself, because as you've seen, it's a very comprehensive, it's a very stringent act, and it's very difficult to get out of it it's a black mark on your career, on your holistic sort of development, and it could hamper you in the future as well. So the legalities are comprehensive. Please don't get into it at all. It is not the right thing to do, and you could probably be destroying your entire career, okay, due to this inadvertent mistake or whatever you call it. So it is time to decide. You have to decide. Please remember, you have to decide that you won't take drugs and protect yourself. Okay. A lot of other things are associated with drugs as well. So before getting into any of it, please decide not to take drugs. Keep the door closed to drugs. Say, no, thanks, I will not. It's easy to say that. All right. Make your life drug free. Okay. Decide that you will not take it. There are many other things to be doing. There is nothing cool about doing drugs. You can be cool with many other activities. Sport, for example. You can be cool with music. You can be cool with so many curricular and co-curricular activities. You need not do drugs. Most people don't do drugs, but they still are cool, isn't it? So you need not look cool. You need not look like a rebel. You need not look grown up by this. You will only spoiling yourself. Okay? So you really do not know when you get addicted. So please don't experiment. The experiment stage almost always proceeds to the addiction stage. So break that chain initially itself. Do not let yourself get carried away. Okay? When you feel low, look for healthier activities, not drugs. Drugs is not the answer to anything and problem in life. You don't need any of them to be free. Be yourself and live life to the full. That is most important. Okay? Take the best shot at life. Stay drug free, because you only get one chance. So stay drug free. Okay? Because if you don't, whenever you deal with drugs, please remember, it's always a dead end. Okay? Please remember that. And friends, I would like to thank the Department of the Directorate of Student Affairs, MAHE, for providing me with an opportunity to speak on some of the legal issues with relation to drugs. I've tried my best to sort of get into some parts of NDPS and bring before you the definitions of what constitute illegality and what are considered as illegal drugs, what are the punishments that are there in the act, what are certain situations which you need to know to help yourself, and also to remember that these situations are pretty difficult to get out of. So trying not to get into the drug habit initially itself. So I've tried my best to convey all these things to you in as short a time as possible, because the act is really comprehensive. These discussions or debates can go on for hours together. So if there are any issues to clarify, you could how does it go? You could probably ask me, or you could probably mail me, or whatever it is, and you could get answers to that as well. We'll get back to you at a later stage. So yeah, I would like to stop here, and thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the comprehensive and very interesting talk on India's drug laws. If any member of the audience has any query, kindly mail them to dsa.mahe@manipal.edu and they will be forwarded to the speaker. We also request you to provide your valuable feedback by scanning the QR code displayed. Please note that e-certificates will be provided only to those who send feedback. So kindly mention your email ID and other details mentioned in the form correctly. I now request Dr. Ashwini Kumar, Deputy Director Student Affairs, MAHE, and Associate Professor in Department of Forensic Medicine, KMC Manipal, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Swati. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Department of Student Affairs, MAHE, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. H.S. Ballal, Pro-Chancellor, MAHE Manipal, for accepting our invitation, inaugurating our website, releasing our newsletter, and also for his presidential remarks. Thank you, sir. My heartfelt thanks to our acclaimed speaker, Dr. Vinod C. Nayak, for accepting our invitation and inspiring us with this informative and enlightening talk. I'm sure each one of us has gained a better understanding on various laws and legal procedures related to substance abuse. I'm certain that this talk has created awareness amongst the audience on legal repercussions of drug abuse. With a deep sense of appreciation, I thank the MAHE officials, heads of various institutions, faculty members, and student friends for their constant support and motivation. My special thanks to all the participants from various institutions for showing their interest and attending today's talk. My heartfelt thanks to Dr. Geeta Maya, Director, Student Affairs, MAHE Manipal, for welcoming the audience and also for her rock-solid support and encouragement throughout. I'd like to thank the Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Swati Bangera, Associate, Department of Student Affairs, MAHE, for introducing the Pro-Chancellor and the speaker, and also taking us through today's program in an efficient manner. A special thanks to Ms. Anusha MK, Assistant Software Specialist from the ISD, MAHE, under the leadership of Mr. Balakrishna Rao, Director, IT Department, MAHE, and Mr. Satish Kamath, Assistant Director, IT Department, MAHE, for creating website of the Department of Student Affairs. My heartfelt thanks to the editorial board headed by Ms. Nikita Menezes, Legal Executive, MAHE Manipal, and Mr. Calvin Allen D'Souza, Student Counselor of Department of Student Affairs, MAHE Manipal, for compiling the newsletter and their technical coordination during this event. On this occasion, I also express my gratitude to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment for entrusting us with the project Nasha Mukt Udupi Abhiyan. The audiovisual team of MAHE, headed by Mr. Suresh K, who have rendered their invaluable support in the making of our newsletter and photographic coverage of the event. We are very grateful to them. Thank you. My thanks are also due to the Deputy Directors, Dr. Veena Maben and Mr. Roshan David Chatanna. My sincere thanks to Dr. Binil, Associate Professor from MCon MAHE, Dr. Ryan Matthias and Dr. Jeevan Lewis, Student Counselors of the Department of Student Affairs, for their wholehearted support. We thank all who have helped directly or indirectly in organizing this event. Finally, a big thank you to each one of you. Wish you a pleasant day.
Thanks, Ashwin.
Thank you, sir. Once again, I thank all of you for taking your time to attend this webinar. I wish you all a good day. Thank you.